Josephat, when you said Linda's, from Africa, she's in the continent. Oftentimes, that is what I face when I do business in the continent. People look at my skin. Sometimes I have to put braids in my hair in order for people to recognize or even think that I am Black, that I am African, despite my lineage, right? So I am African. I just don't happen to live on the continent because something happens long ago. And so I have to have the pleasure of both worlds, right? So my dad happens to be Cheyenne, which is native to the Americans. And my family was owned in this country by a set of Welsh people that created the skin tone that I happen to live in. But inside of me, throughout and throughout, I am probably one of the most blackest people that you will ever meet. So the second thing that I wanted to bring up was when we think about policies, it's a both and. The governments have to have an affirmative action policy, right? The same thing that Africans on the continent face with being blocked and not having access to opportunities, and the policies that are being made that disenfranchise them are the very same things that Black folks here in the United States face. And I'll speak on the United States, and I'll leave Dennis to speak on the Caribbean or the UK. But the same thing that Black folks face here, where we're etched out of opportunities, they're codified in law. In the United States of America, it was codified in law called redlining, that banks would never lend to Black folks to establish wealth. But we had the Homestead Act, where Europeans received land given to them, gifted to them, and taken by Native American peoples who were exterminated, well, tried to be exterminated in order to live. So for Africa as a whole, when Black American companies come to the table to say, let's build the Africa that we deserve, let's move Africa beyond aid, we have to first get to this place that we are thinking about our genetic survival, about our survival as a people. Because as the situations are, when we look at any data set, Black folks fall the bottom. We die out of heart disease, high blood pressure. You start naming the effects of poverty and which is caused by racism. We start dying off and having low life expectancy. And if we plan on having a continent that is ours, we have to have a mindset that's 100 years out and not for the future. So that ties into greed. When other countries come in with their contracts, they're able to give someone else, a handoff, and that handoff goes for their own personal use, and the population suffers. So in the work that we have a small project going on in Liberia around waste management, and it's youth-led and it's youth-focused, and we have an implementing partner on the ground, Rising Hope Liberia, that's doing the work on the ground with the International Institute. There has to be ways for public-private partnerships to come to play. There has to be concessions that are made. Most often, Black Americans who are doing this work, we're doing this work with small, medium-sized Black American private sector businesses who at heart have the desire to connect to the continent of Africa and are looking for ways for naturalization so that they too can stay and help build and have legacy in the continent. Oftentimes when you go to Ghana and other places, not singling out a country, but where you have Chinatowns that are happening, they're doing that for their own development of their own people. But here, Black Americans are wanting and doing that through the International Institute so that we can have pathways to citizenship. In Zimbabwe, there's cannabis on the table that we're looking to move that cannabis throughout so that we can actually start to, heal ourselves through the medical promise, but also in the United States of America. We have Black folks who have been to jail for 20, 30 years for trying to do the same thing that now is legal for Europeans to do, which is to sell cannabis. And we've been in jail, we've been imprisoned, and the laws and the opportunities to get into the cannabis business, the medical cannabis business, are beyond us. And the access to capital that is needed is beyond us. So one way that old people did when I was growing up is they created a susu, or they created a savings mechanism so that people could start businesses. We see that with uh, um, other populations that figure out collective or cooperative economics. And so through the International Institute, it's highly possible for the work necessary when you get small investment to be able to come in. Can you imagine what it would look like for a cement company when we're looking at building our homes that is Black owned? We no longer will start have to worrying about the purity of the cement, because we know that each person who owns this company has a share in it. And not only the share in it that they're receiving a dividend back, but the share is that they are tied to wanting to see Black life live and prosper.